Thank you very much. It's a very great pleasure to take part in this needle-moving event on enforcement of intellectual property rights. And it's really a particular honor for me and the European Commission to be able to close the event together with the Swedish Council Presidency and the European Parliament, although only with online presence, but with whom that we really have an excellent cooperation to modernize the EU-level legislative framework for protection of IP rights. And we do need a very strong legal framework, but we also need strong enforcement frameworks where all actors can come together to share their expertise in the fight against counterfeiting and piracy. It starts at the source, with the patent holders whose rights are being infringed, with the intermediaries whose services are being abused, and the fight is continued by regulators and enforcement authorities, by customs controls, border controls, customs agents, postal service providers, and so on. And that's why I allow myself to use the word needle moving, because this summit has really been a forum for exchanges between the actors. And seeing the IP right holders, the intermediaries, and the law enforcement officers exchanging expertise and experience for the mutual good is really inspiring. And I hope that we can all take something with us, something that we have learned here, and bring it back into our daily jobs. In the Commission and DG GROW, we are convinced that a strong and effective IP enforcement system in the EU is an essential element to protect the EU industry's competitiveness and the innovation. And we know that studies published by the EU Intellectual Property Office and by the European Patent Office tell us that IP-intensive industries have generated, directly or indirectly, almost 40% of all jobs in Europe. And firms which own IP rights tend to be larger, perform better, and pay higher salaries. So IP is really a valuable asset for the European companies, and it can help them secure financing to grow their business. And here I would like to point out that accurate valuation of IP assets facilitates businesses' access to finance. And though banks frequently shy away from accepting intangibles as collateral because they perceive them with a certain uncertainty, there are several generally accepted methods to measure the value of an IP asset. The main obstacle at present is a general lack of awareness about these methodologies. So more knowledge building and awareness raising would make the trading of IP rights more efficient and profitable, which in turn could stimulate IP-backed financing and give our industry, and in particular our SMEs, the tools to provide information on their IP to investors. So we need to enhance the valuation of IP assets and use our networks for this purpose. The financing sector, be it the public financial institutions or the private banks, have a clear role to play, a clear task to fulfill to ensure correct valuation of IP assets. But these value-creating assets can only have an impact if the IP is duly enforced. Looking back to 2020, where the Commission's IP action plan was adopted, you will see that it's an ambitious plan. It's a document with a very detailed roadmap on how to make the most of the EU's innovative potential to support the Union's recovery after the pandemic and also boost its future resilience. The IP action plan makes IP enforcement a clear priority for the EU. Without strong IP enforcement, innovative ideas cannot be sufficiently protected, and companies lose out on their investments and on their access to future capital. In the case of SMEs in particular, this can lead to complete business failure. The solutions, we have to find them together. Yesterday, you heard about concrete operations which aim to tackle counterfeiting in the context of EMPACT. And I cannot emphasize enough how valuable EMPACT operations are. EMPACT brings us valuable insight into the latest trends in crime, such as increased use of social media to advertise counterfeit goods. Additionally, we now know that while the majority of counterfeit goods come from outside the EU, there are also production sites within our borders. Infringers are becoming more sophisticated, even to the extent of assembling final counterfeited products in the single market. So cooperation between law enforcement authorities under EMPACT provides a really unique opportunity to connect the dots and identify the bad players operating in Europe. You have also heard how many different stakeholders are collaborating with each other to tackle IP infringement. Such cooperation between stakeholders is really at the core of any efficient action to fight counterfeiting and piracy. If you will, we have to outsmart the infringers. We have to be faster than them to make use of new technologies so we can detect and prevent infringements. We heard in the panel of this morning how different stakeholders are working on blockchain projects. This might be a way to make use of these new technologies against the infringers. Also, the adoption of the Digital Services Act, which is soon becoming applicable across the EU, provides an opportunity to set even more ambitious goals in the fight against counterfeiting and piracy online. And I would also like to mention, as both the Council and Parliament did, the Commission's recommendation on combating online piracy and unauthorized streaming of live events, which we adopted last month. With the support of the EU Observatory, we will monitor the effects of this recommendation. And we will take the lessons learned here in Sofia into account in our further work on IP enforcement. Turning to our future actions, we are planning to adopt the EU Toolbox against counterfeiting by the end of the year. As mentioned by Commissioner Breton in yesterday's address, the Toolbox will focus on several pillars. First, we want to modernize the MOU on the sale of counterfeit goods on the internet, to promote and cooperation with all actors that can even go beyond the new obligations foreseen in the Digital Services Act. We want to optimize legal proceedings, bringing clarity to the rules that are applicable. And with the Toolbox, we also want to promote the new technologies and the surveillance tools, including information sharing under the recently adopted customs reform. And we will want to promote the opportunities and the challenges that the use of artificial intelligence will generate. And we will finally promote training and international cooperation as part of our awareness-raising strategy. So in this toolbox, we will have a good mix of soft law, like recommendation and guidance, but also very pragmatic measures that can help you in your daily fight against IP crime. For instance, we will have a toolkit on cyber theft, containing things like training modules or other practical help, helping also SMEs to protect their trade secrets. And as mentioned by Commissioner Breton, and as you have discussed in the panel this morning, we will have a special focus on empowering SMEs. Because IP infringement is really threatening the viability of SMEs, which is a very serious problem. So the Commission will continue to work together with the EUIPO to provide financial support to European SMEs for the protection of their trademarks, their patents, but also their plant variety rights, and help them design their IP strategies. And we will do a study on the effectiveness of the IP Enforcement Directive to see how it can help you tackle the real-life issues that you face. Finally, we are modernizing our IP rules framework, which will also help enforcement. This includes a revision of the rules for EU designs and the new schemes that we have heard mentioned for geographical indications for craft and industrial products. And they will protect products also when they are in transit to third countries. And we are overhauling and bringing more transparency and fairness to the patent licensing landscape by proposing new rules on standard essential patents, on supplementary protection certificates, and on compulsory licensing in times of crisis. And finally, with the entry into force of the unitary patent on the 1st of June, we are paving the way for a new, effective, centralized system for patent enforcement. This can only bring more legal certainty and reduce costs when enforcing IP rights. So I want to thank the Swedish presidency of the Council for ensuring the successful launch of the unitary patent. And thanks are also due to the European Parliament for their engagement in setting up the geographical indication system for the craft and industrial products, and in general for their continued support in the implementation of the IP Action Plan. And I'll finish by thanking our partners at the EUIPO, the Observatory, and of course the Patent Office of the Republic of Bulgaria, and in particular Vladia Borisova, for making this wonderful event a reality. Congratulations indeed to all the organizers. Many have participated in each their little way to make this a success. And we sincerely hope to see you again at the next summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Merete. You've done my job for me. I was really just coming up here to thank all the organisers, of course, the hosts here in Bulgaria, the EUIPO, the interpreters, the tech team, everyone who has helped make today a success, including all our cameramen. And that will be my cue to remind you that you can see videos of all the plenary sessions. Some of them from yesterday are already up on the website, so keep an eye out on those. Please do keep sharing them. Long after the event, the conversations will continue. Use the hashtag IP Enforcement. And a few figures, we've had more than 600 attendees altogether, counting those online as well as in person, and more than 50 speakers. So a lot of people, a lot of thoughts, a lot of engagement. So give yourselves a big round of applause. And just a reminder, there's a network lunch outside as well. See you next year.